All right, want to welcome you. You're just joining us. Sorry, we're a little bit late. My name is Chris Regan with Jay Hall, and here with Justin Simmons and his wife, Tarans Simmons, is joining us today. So excited to have them on with us today. If it's your first time on, you're wondering, hey, what's this all about? I just saw this on a Twitter feed. Click the link. What we do on Mondays and Fridays, especially during this quarantine time, Justin, Jay, and myself, Jay and I are both on staff with FCA right here in the Treasure Coast, get on and we discuss, the three of us are friends, and we dive into the Word of God and talk about current live situations that are taking place on the planet and how do we conduct ourselves in the midst of adversity, in the midst of testing. Talking a lot about Justin's history from childhood all the way through into the NFL right now, and marriage, kids, the whole 9 yards, and really specifically the goal of these calls that we do live on YouTube are to encourage you. We don't do this to try to build some following. We're not trying to do this to get, trust me, all of us have a lot going on even in the midst of quarantine. So we're doing it because we're three friends that enjoy hanging together and want to take the gospel and encourage you guys with real truth in the midst of a time where if you turn the news on, it can discourage you and depress you in 2 seconds. So we believe by doing this, taking the Word of God as a foundation to the way that you think, the lens that you look through, would cause your heart to be set completely apart in a good way, not making yourself better than anybody, but setting yourself on the level that God created you to walk in. So, just want to welcome you guys. Excited you're here. Jay, I'm going to pass it over to you a little bit, and we're going to dive in. Taryn, pumped that you're on the call. If you've not heard from Taryn before, I've heard her speak. She's going to be like, get out of here. She'll yell at me, but I heard her talk and share some at a middle school a couple years ago, probably 200 kids, and a number of those kids just so blessed. Yes, they came for the high five and the autograph to hear from Justin, but they also got rocked by what Taryn brings. She played, I think, D1 basketball. Am I right by that? Yes, she's shaking her head humbly. She could still cross you up even being a mom, so all you ballers out there, bring it. But I'm going to pass it over to Jay. Jay, kick us off, get us started, and obviously, Justin, jump in whenever you want. We're going to kind of take this time too, because we felt having Taryn on this call is important just to hear from her as not just as an NFL wife, but as a woman that we know, beautiful woman of integrity, carries herself with such a high standard and is such a role model just to so many other young women and even women that would want to aspire for greatness. And we've watched Taryn on and off the field just be just this steady Eddie, if for lack of better words, and keeping the course and doing things right and being a role model for the next generation of women. So Jay, get us going, open us up, and maybe hit some questions for Taryn to get us started. And yeah, excited you guys are here.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, let's rock and roll. I'll pray real quick. Lord, we just thank you so much. I thank you for my friends. I pray that you would continuously bless every listener on this call, that we just pray for our region. We pray for our country. We ask that we would just turn our eyes back to the beauty of Jesus, and we glorify your name, Jesus, in all that we do. Amen.
Amen.
All right, cool. So just staying on the topic of that, and I mean, we've been so blessed just to be able to talk with Justin and hear all of his perspective so far, but we just want to hear your perspective, Taryn, of like this whole COVID-19. I mean, I personally know, I follow you on Instagram, so I've seen some of the things that have been on your heart, but like, what's the Father been putting on your heart during this time? Like, just the things that are highlighted to you right now.
I don't know. I feel like it depends on the day.
Yeah, that's everybody.
So, some days it's like, okay, we're blessed. We have a home to live in. We have food on our table. We're healthy. Like, that's all we need. But I'm not going to pretend that there's not days where I'm like, is this ever going to end? This is stressful. This has shook up our whole world. It's just a weird time, and I don't think there's a right or wrong way to feel about it. It's like okay to feel everything. So yeah, it depends on the day, but in general, I feel like we are very lucky and blessed, and we are healthy. We are able to have groceries. We're able to stay quarantined. Like, we don't have to risk our lives and go out anywhere. And that's just something not a lot of people can do. And so we don't take that lightly at all.
Yeah.
And then just have a heavy heart for people that are being affected, whether it's that now that they're not going to school, they can't get a lunch. Like, that stuff is just really heavy on our hearts and sad. And so we've been trying to help in any way that we can. But yeah, I guess it depends on the day, how I exactly feel. But in general, we feel very blessed. And I never want to like come across as like our worries are so small in comparison to some other people's worries. So we're thankful. And I think God is using, like, he put a pause on all of our lives, and we can use that to fill it with other things, or we can use it to like fill it with time with him. So it's been a big blessing in a weird way. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
No, that's fire. Definitely. Even that last point, we've been reading this book, and it's called The Look and Live. It's for, we've been reading it with our Central Atlantic region of FCA, which I didn't even know we were part of technically, but I kind of knew, but I didn't know. But but I know now, and I know everyone who's working up there now. But and we had to read chapters 1 and 2 for this week. And it was really cool because the author, he's a worship leader. So I thought originally, I was like, this book's going to be about worship. And like, I just didn't really know what it was. And technically it is about worship. But one thing he said was, he started the book off by talking about the glory of God. And he was saying that worship is a byproduct of glory, you know, and that whatever, like, glory is like what you find that's beautiful. And of course, like that's we always talk about like God's glorious, and I never really understood that. But like, even the topic of like spending time, like, and he was basically, what he was saying is that whatever, like, we're going to worship regardless. Like, we can't not worship. We're worship machines, you know, and you could worship everything that's going on around you, or you could worship the creator. So I think for us, like, we just want to know, and especially like you guys with Lainey, and like, that's their baby. So how are you staying engaged with Jesus, like keeping your eye on him during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think most parents would say it's challenging when there's little people that like need your attention all the time, but it doesn't mean like I can't do it. So whether I get up before she does to get in the word, or sometimes I'm like, okay, you're going to watch a TV show so that I can get in the word. And that's just how it's going to be today. Or she'll nap, and that's when I do it, or after she goes to sleep. But I know for a fact, if I don't, like, my day is just not going to be the same as if I did. So just finding a pocket of time to get in the word and pray is just important to me, and that's something that I'm going to make a priority. But for me personally, like, quarantine doesn't necessarily change that, because I'm a stay-at-home mom. So it's the same. My time with Jesus is the same as before quarantine. My life is not the same. Like, we usually don't stay in the house all day, but that aspect of my life hasn't necessarily changed. But not having any plans, like, we don't have things to go get to, and like, we're not in a rush to get anywhere, that opens up more time, really. So I just feel like there's even less of an excuse for me personally to get in the word. So that's, I guess, how I do it. But
that's fire, definitely. So, and yeah, that's pretty good. And even right now during this time, you guys would typically be back in Denver, so you would have your normal routine rolling, and things would be a lot different. So I understand that's a big difference. But I know Chris and I talked about just transitioning. We wanted to know, like, obviously the draft came up, and it was a whole different experience this year, like watching it virtually. But I know y'all's draft story was pretty special, and we've heard it from Justin's perspective. He told us, like, he was like giving God, like, he was laying out a fleece, like, Lord, if you don't do it in this round, like, I'm not going to play. And he was going to come work for FCA. That's what he told us, Chris, right? But we want to hear from your perspective, like, how was the draft for you? I don't think I've ever really known that. So what was that like?
Okay, so I guess he probably said this part, going into his senior season is when we like sat down. At this point, we were pretty newly engaged. We had gotten engaged in June, and then he was going into his senior season like a month later. So we kind of just had a sit down talk, like, is this worth even pursuing? Like, do you want to go to the NFL? Like, because that's going to change my plans. So after a lot of discussion and prayer, it was kind of like, okay, like he said, like if these things happen, we'll do it. If they don't, no big deal. It was kind of plan B. We weren't planning our whole lives around him going to the NFL. So we both graduated in December of that year, and and at this point, things had happened that he was going to train for the combine. He got invited to the combine. Like, we were going to at least pursue it. Who knows if it happened, but we were going to try at this point. So I had gotten a job offer that was, I guess, kind of like a dream job after college that I had to turn down because it wasn't ethically for me. It wasn't right for me to take the job knowing possibly in 4 months I'm going to peace out on them and move to Denver. So I didn't take the job. I took a job that I didn't really want, but that understood my situation. Mm-hmm. And so I started working, and we got married at the beginning of April that year. And again, he did really well in the combine. He probably said that side of the story where things he went from being like probably an undrafted guy and just like climbed his way up. And it was like less than a month after we got married was the draft. And that week was just it's a weird, like your life is about to change, but maybe it won't, but maybe it'll all work out. Like you just have no idea. So it's a big question mark, but I was that Friday night. So it was the third round, last pick of the third round. He got the call. You're going to Denver. It was really like exciting, but also scary because you're like, okay, now what? Yeah. I've never done this before. Like he gets to go chase his dreams, but what does that look like for me? Yeah. So I had to quit my job, but again, ethically, like I couldn't just quit the next day. Like I had to stay another 2 months and train the person behind me. So he left for Denver. I stayed here. We're newlyweds doing long distance, which we had already done a lot of long distance. We were like, really again? Yeah. But he went to Denver and I stayed back and finished out the job that I was working at and moved to Denver in July after he was drafted. That was during training camp. If I could go back in time, I would never do that, but I didn't know what training camp meant. So I moved to Denver. He's living in a hotel and working 12 hours a day. And I don't really see him for like 5 weeks. This goes on. And I don't have a friend in Denver. I don't have a family member in Denver. Nobody. I just up and moved and not knowing that I wasn't going to see him for 5 weeks, really. He would come home like once a week on off days, but that's it. So that was really like a wake up call, I guess, for me. I was like, who am I? Yeah. What like any identity that I thought I had was like stripped away. So it was really good, I think, for me as like a woman and also as a wife. And it just kind of like God used that in a lot of ways to help mold me. But yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but at the same time, like so good. All of the things that we thought were just huge bumps in the road, like they were good for us. So it was an experience to say the least, but yeah. It was good.
For sure. And I feel like that means like you were at that first training camp as well. Like the Lord was training you and equipping you for like the woman you are now. And Chris and I have talked about it, but I feel like even compared to last summer, like to now, I feel like you guys' faith has just grown tremendously. And you've always been faithful people, but your perspective about God has like transformed you. Like I can definitely see it, like for sure. But I know Chris had some questions about like the integrity and the purity, like, and maybe we can tag Justin along in that as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. What I wanted to throw out there for you, Tarans, specifically, and you guys can at any point, go in and but at any point chime in and as far as, hold on one second, I'm gonna go to gallery view because I'm having a hard time. There we go. At any point, jump in there and talk about your relationship. But I wanted to specifically as, let's say a young woman was, who follows you, Taryn, or is saying, I want to aspire one day. If you talk to every young girl, they're pretty much going to say at some point, some way, shape, or form, going to want to know, how do I one day want to get married. I one day want to have kids, and I would love to have a husband that would provide for me. Most women would say that. I'm not going to speak for every woman, but to young girls out there, knowing what you know now and knowing we've watched you, Jay and I, and obviously Justin, not the shock and awe, not the I'm going to go try to marry, like Justin's a guy you dated in high school and in college. So it wasn't, you knew Justin way before Justin was Justin on paper in the NFL. So, but just talk about the importance of setting your heart apart versus allowing the world to shape you as a young woman. Because we've watched you, and I don't know your whole life, but what I've watched you do is you've lived a pure life and you've wanted to do the right things. And I'm sure at times when you didn't, you got back on your feet. But what would you say to young girls that would possibly be listening to that? What does it mean to be all in, as far as like, with what does real beauty look like, and what is it, how can you be beautiful in a society that wants to sexualize everything and make it awful, but yet stands tall in your faith and say I can be beautiful, but yet live on this track that would allow to be an actual role model, things you'd inspire young women to do. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I will preface this with my childhood and even most of high school, we didn't have social media. So that's a whole different ballgame that I think affects both girls and boys, but definitely can have an effect on girls. So I don't know that from a perspective of like a middle school or high schooler, because we didn't have it. I think I got a Facebook when I was like a sophomore, and we didn't have Facebook on our phones or anything. It was just a very different time. And so I think that has a huge element into shaping girls today. And so I guess we can talk about that more later. But for me personally, that was a loaded question. So I would just say, I think, again, for me, it's ended up being married to an NFL player, but just a healthy marriage in general. I think it's important that you are like complete in yourself, and like, I know who I am and I know who God says I am. And like that started long before, like, so Justin didn't make me. It was like, I already knew who I was before I met Justin. Or maybe at that time, maybe I was still molding because we were young, but like that I think is very hard for a high school and middle school girl. Is like, you can get wrapped up in what your classmates maybe are saying about you, or boys for a girl, or for boys, like what girls are saying about you. And it's hard to take myself back to that place, but like what they say doesn't matter, and it matters who God thinks you are. And there is like a confidence that will radiate from you if you already know that. And that, like you said, like there's a beauty that goes beyond just looks, and it's just like being confident in who you are, and that doesn't mean like you're not going to have bad days, and you're not going to have those thoughts, and you're not going to be self-conscious or whatever it is. But it just, you can always go back to like, who does God say I am? What does the word say about this? And like, you can pray and talk to God and tell him how you're feeling. And just that, I feel like there's an element of beauty to that, and just the confidence of who God says you are. And then the second thing I was going to get to is just having someone to talk to about it, whether that's, I would think preferably a woman who is older than you, that has gone before you, and that you can confide in, and that you trust her like wisdom. Because if you're asking your friends who maybe don't have the same morals that you have, what do they think about this? Or what does this mean that this boy said to me? And like, they're not going to tell you what you need to hear in that moment, where maybe someone that you have met at church, or someone that you like, an older sister, or I don't know, a cousin, just finding a woman that you trust her opinion, and you know that she is going to speak like life into you, and not just like what you need, what you want to hear at the time, but like what you need to hear. And I think that is so huge, in having someone to like guide you through life. It's not just in middle school and high school. Like I use that now. I think when I'm 80, hopefully I can still have a mentor. I think that is really important. And that's hard to find. So it's not like, oh yeah, just go out and find someone, like pray about it and see if you'll know when you meet them. But I feel like that's so vital because yeah, asking your friends will usually lead you down a bad path. Yeah, was that answer? Did that answer all the questions?
No, that's awesome. I'm gonna do one more follow-up though, if that's cool. So along with that, just how do you, I mean, obviously the accountability you said was really big, and you grew up, it sounds like to me you grew up around people that were pushing you in the right direction and not down the wrong, which is, you know, like you said, not having a cell phone and social media as a middle school kid or a high school. I don't know if you had it. You had it in high school.
You had cell phones, but you didn't have internet on your cell phone.
Yes.
So like you could just, and we had limited text message.
Yeah.
You just texted like 10 times a day max because
I didn't have a cell phone until college. So
it was like, I really just texted my mom until maybe my junior year of high school. And that maybe.
Yeah.
It was different.
No, yeah. So we didn't grow up with the social media generation, but obviously is dealing with the social media generation. So my thought in all of that is talk a little bit about just if you were a middle school girl or a high school girl now, how would you conduct yourself, or what would you say to a middle school or high school girl and that maybe doesn't have great parents, that doesn't have great role models, and doesn't have any mentors? Like like maybe a girl's mentor right now is what she sees her friends post, and that's what she's going to be like. Or maybe it's that I saw that girl on this movie and she's beautiful, so I'm going to try to be her. And how important, like, and all along, I'm encapsulating the question into even a girl that's like, I have no church experience and I don't even find it important to have to like guard my heart. What do you mean guard my heart? What would you, if you were in a group with just girls right now, what would you say to young women, how important it is to protect your purity because God gave it to you, and not just to give it away, even when you don't feel like you have a lot of support?
Yeah. I would just like challenge them to think about the long term, like whether that's 5 years from now or 10 years from now or whatever. All of your life experiences will help mold you into who you are as an adult. It doesn't matter what you think in the moment. Like that's just something that's always going to be a part of you, and not necessarily that's going to like ruin your life, because that's not it at all. And there's like redemption, and God could use anything for something good. But it is going to mold you in some way, shape, or form. And so just trying to set your eyes on like, if that is your goal, like, hey, it's important for me to guard my heart because I know I want to be a wife one day. I want to be a mom one day. And like, what kind of wife and mom do I want to be? And those life experiences, like those will affect you as an adult, whether you think so in the moment or not. And it's like, it's so hard to think that as a young girl. But I can say from experience, from me looking back on my childhood, like all of those moments like shaped me into who I am. That's just how it works, I guess. Like you just are the sum of what your life experiences. And so just being aware of like, this isn't just something that's going to happen this year in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade, and just knowing like, hey, who do I really want to be, and what do I want my life to look like one day, and how can I get there? And if that means you need to find different friends, again, that's hard, but it's doable. And maybe just find one new friend that you were like, I really like how that girl posts on social media. Like she always seems like she's encouraging, and what she posts is like makes me smile, and like I don't feel bad about myself because of things that she posts. Like that's probably the people that you want to surround yourself with, because you're not in this comparison thing, because that's what happens on social media. You just compare yourself to everybody else. but maybe someone in your school posts things that you think are just encouraging, and whether you know her at all or not, I think just maybe set out to like, let me see if I can DM her. Let me see if she responds, and try to make friends with her. Not that you need to ditch all your old friends right away, but let's just make one new friend that is going to be like an encouraging light in your life. And in a lot of ways, I think that could just kind of start to turn you down the right path. Even if it's just one friend, because it's hard to just be like, okay, we'll just ditch all your friends, go get new friends. That's just really unrealistic, especially right now, because we can't even do anything. But you can reach out to someone on social media. If there are specific people that you follow on social media that make you feel bad about yourself or make you feel like you want to do bad things, if you see things they just like unfollow them, because you might hurt someone's feelings, but it doesn't really, like, that's important for you. And even as a 26-year-old, like, I have to unfollow people because I'm like, every time I see something that this girl posts, like, I feel bad about myself. And that's just not healthy. And it's not anything that she did directly towards me. It's just not healthy for me. So I don't need to see it. And I just unfollow her. It's no hard feelings towards this girl, but I just know for me as a person and what I want for myself, like, that's not things I want to think about. And I don't want to follow people that make me feel self-conscious or make me doubt things about myself. And so I would just say, try to like go through your Instagram and just really like have a reality check with yourself. Like, how do I feel about this? Like, what does it, when I'm on Instagram and I close it, like, what do I feel? Do I feel sad? Like, and then I shouldn't feel sad after looking at that. And you can try to like take little steps to shift that and make it more of an encouraging place. Yeah, I don't know if you want to chime in at all on that one. It's hard. It's hard because I can't imagine. It's hard as an adult, social media. Like, it's tricky. So I can't imagine in middle school, but I think there are ways that you can make it like a positive thing and try to help shape who you want to be as an adult. But
for sure, I even I want to know, because I mean, I've seen it, like, as soon as, I think social media kind of affects y'all differently, even as adults now, like, even though you didn't deal with it as teenager, like, you have it on a whole nother spectrum, like with your Instagrams, because people know you. Yeah. And it's not just like some people, it's like a lot of people know you. And even like, I've seen some of the comments under Justin's post. I'm like, who are y'all talking to like that? Even for me, I'm like, y'all are disrespectful in here. So
yes, I gotta exit out when that happens.
Yeah, that's like, how does that work? Or like, what are, like, even, it's like, even women like talking disrespect. It's like, this is terrible. Like, why would you say this? Like, so how do y'all deal with like managing like that, or just turning that off? Because I know some people turn comments off, but y'all are gracious enough to keep y'all's on. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, Justin would say he doesn't really get affected by that, that's just a gift that I know I don't have, but let me know if you guys have that, because it affects me. So I will usually, if I see a comment, I mean, I don't get a ton of hate, thankfully, but if it happens, if it's a comment on my picture, I will immediately delete the comment and I will block that person, because that's how I know, whether that's the holiest thing to do, I don't know, but that's how I know, like, okay, this person doesn't deserve to like be in part of my life if that's what they're going to bring to the table. Because then you're just worried, okay, if I post again, like, are they going to comment something nasty again? Then all of these other people that maybe look to my post for encouragement are going to read that. And like, I don't want that on my page. And so that's the first thing I do. I'll just delete the comment. I'll block them. Even if I don't know if they were being super mean or not, if it just like made, you can tell in their heart what they were trying to say, and it wasn't positive for my like well-being. I'm like, mm-mm. Or if they write me a mean message, I'll just block them. And that's how I've had to deal with it. Because otherwise, it does, if they catch you on a bad day, like maybe on a good day, that comment will be like, oh, that kind of hurt, but like I can laugh it off and I'll show Justin, we like laugh and it's not a big deal. But say I just had the worst day and someone writes something that just gets under my skin enough that it just starts to eat away at you. And that just gives the devil a chance to like, oh, well, yeah, you really aren't that whatever. Like you should feel self-conscious about this. And then you start to question everything you post and everything. And it's like, I'm not posting for you. Like this is my page and I can bring encouragement to people and I want to, and I'm going to be confident in that. And if someone has something to say about it, I just have to make it so they can't see my stuff. And I don't know how I feel like Justin probably doesn't block a lot of people. He doesn't really get affected by it though.
Yeah, no, comments they don't really affect me. It wasn't always like that, but I just learned over the years, like the way to win. And I'm not saying don't take Tarans' advice in terms of not blocking people, but because that's how you deal with not responding to hate, and that's how you deal with it. For me, like I'm just gonna belittle them and not even acknowledge that they are there or like are affecting me. Now, if you're talking about like my family, that's different, you know, then Black Justin comes out. But
oh my gosh.
If you're talking about
like football,
and football, like I could care less, because the perception anyway is different. If like Ed Reed commented on my post and say you're the worst safety ever play the game, like all right, I might have second thoughts about me playing football. But when I have some dude named John in Arizona that probably has like a high school varsity letter for 1 year, like I'm not going to really take that to heart, because I'm playing my sport professionally. You're on the couch watching me play. This is not to be harsh, but that's just the perspective you have to think about it in. Like they're probably commenting because, something's going wrong in their life and something happened with their football background that like they're insecure about. If I didn't blow out my knee, I would have been the best quarterback since, like something like that. So there's just no point in even responding to something like that, because they're not going to want to hear what I have to say. And I definitely don't want to hear what they have to say. So it's easier for me to just block it out. Don't even look at it.
Yeah, that's powerful. Because you're always going to have, every day you're going to have 100 people that love you and 100 that hate you and 100 that don't care. I mean, or whatever numbers those are. And so knowing, having 10 ears is what I used to, when I played baseball, that's what I would hear it called. The umpire has 10 ears, or the pitcher, if you say one thing, you're going to get in his head. And then it's just like you guys said, it's people's insecurities, taking their days out or their past hurts out on people just for fun and making a stupid excuse for it. But 99 out of 100 times, they'd never say it to your face anyway. But it's a good test for you, a good trial run, if you will, either way. But talk a little bit about your relationship together. I just want you guys to maybe dive in a little bit in some of the dynamics. You don't necessarily, you can go down your past history with your story, but more so wanting to talk about it's almost become not normal to see a healthy marriage nowadays. I see a lot of people either, and I'm not judging, but when I'm about to make the comments that I'm making, but I've been in ministry, 13 years, been married 12, had very rough seasons, had very amazing. My wife and I are doing amazing. And I understand the ebbs and flows of marriage. But maybe just talk a little bit about the dynamics of those ebbs and flows, and how there's hard seasons, good seasons, but how important commitment and what love really is and what it isn't. Because people now are just like, hey, I'm just not into her as much as I used to be when we got married. And I'm thinking, that's just not biblical. I love you, but that's not, you're into you. That's why you're saying that. Or he is so into himself. Well, it's probably because you're also into you. And again, not being critical, but just people dynamics that come up in talk. So just kind of dive in a little bit and maybe some of the secrets in your marriage. I know you guys have been married, 5 years? Is it 5 years?
4. Just
celebrated your 4-year. Come on. So maybe talk a little bit about how important it is just how important relationships are, because there's probably people that will end up watching this that aren't married, but people that are married, how important it is to lay your life down for one another, rather than what can I get from him or what can I get from her to make it all about me, but rather what can I do to serve and make the other person better. just dive in, maybe talk about some of your experiences and how you guys win on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let Taryn go second this time, just because I'm really passionate about this topic. And I think this is great, just personally for me, because a lot of people, like that know us, especially would see like, high school sweethearts, got through college, like now in the like the professional level, and like they've handled like all the adversity, quote unquote. And it's just like all social media sites, kind of like false perception, like that we're perfect, we don't have problems, just because all we post is like the good stuff. And I think, especially on my end, like, people are always, another question we had before is like, how are you staying so humble, blah, 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 blah. I'd said community, and this is a big part of my community, right? And I think for me, that's huge, because I know, like, if anyone knew like half of the stuff about me that Taryn knows, like no way would they be saying
That's not true.
like half the things they say. And I'm just being honest though, like, then that's part of like marriage and like the commitment and sacrifice you were talking about, like you're not gonna, I heard a really powerful testimony one time. And it was about, this couple, they were married, and long story short, like, the woman cheated on, or the wife cheated on the husband, and the husband went to a pastor and was like, hey, what am I doing here? I know, like, in scripture, it says that we can divorce if
Infidelity.
Yeah. And so, but like, I need some guidance here. And he goes, well, yeah, I mean, the pastor gave him, like, I think the best advice I've ever heard about this topic. Cause if it was me, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's divorce. But but I heard the best thing ever. And it was like, he told the guy, he goes, yeah, well, of course in scripture, it says you can do that. And like, there are no, like, I'm not God, but I'm also going to say, like, it says in the scripture, I don't think the Lord would hold it against you, like, blah, blah, blah. But then he went on to say, but how powerful would it be to spread God's love and the message in his kingdom if in your heart, you can't just do it just to do it, but in your heart, like, you accepted your wife, right, in her mistakes, because that's what you married into, and you accepted her for it, and you moved past this, and you still, after all this, like, you don't hold it against her, you love her, you commit to her, and you basically like stand firm on your vows of like, I'm gonna stick with you even through the hard times, like. And I thought that was super powerful. Kind of gave me like a whole new perspective on like marriage and like real commitment. And I have a lot of issues, just like a lot of other men, and it's tough working through a bunch of those things. And, the Lord's blessed me with Taryn, being able to like hold conversations with me, like look me in the eyes and talk about some heavy topics. And so I say that from like her perspective, like, it's not always easy. My perspective, it's not always easy, but like, we're two unperfect people, trying to, be one flesh now and trying to figure this out. And the thing that I think Taryn can hit on it more too, is I think the thing that really helps us is obviously our relationship with the Lord, and knowing that is like, at the end of the day, like, we're truly and honestly not trying to hurt each other. We're really there for each other and trying to build each other up. So like, we get mad and we get in arguments, like, we have to remind ourselves of that sometimes, because it's like, well, you're out to get me. I don't like this. And it's like, no, I'm not out to get you. I just forgot. Like, I'm human. Like, I just forgot that's your thing. I should do a better job of remembering. And on the verse, I should do a better job of, showing more grace in that area, because it's not natural for you to have that in your mind yet, like, that takes time. And so I just think it's important, man. There's, the world says like, just go try different things and find the ones you like. And when you don't, it's okay. You can just, drop that person, move on to the next one. And, everyone has their thing, but I'm telling you, like, obviously I've only been with one woman, but it's a choice. There's not one woman that's out there that's going to satisfy you, in terms of everything. Yeah. That's going to make you stay committed to that woman. Like, there's always going to be something better and better and better and better. It's a choice. and you have to be able to be committed to the person that you're making that commitment to. And I think it's important.
Yeah, I'll touch on that same point he said about like we're trying to build each other up. One thing we'll always say is like we're on the same team. And so a lot of times I think the devil will try to hurt a relationship by like bringing you apart and making you fight against each other. And it's like, we don't need to fight against each other. We're on the same team. We have the same end goal. We want to like reconcile and get better from this argument, but like we're on the same team. So like, I'm not trying to throw jabs at Justin. Like, I'm not trying to say really mean things that'll just like get under his skin or do things that I know are just going to make him, you know, really mad, because what is that going to, how am I going to benefit from that? How is that going to help our marriage? So that doesn't mean that like you just run from conflict. Like, oh, nope, we're on the same team. So like, there's this issue, but I'm just going to throw it under the rug because like we can't fight. That's just very not true. If you're married or if you're with someone for any amount of time, like you're gonna have arguments and disagreements, and that's healthy. And I think it's good. And I think that's like an indication that we care, because we're going to try to work through hard things. But I think there's a healthy way to communicate and argue. And like, if I'm just really, really mad, I know like I need to go take a walk or something, chill out. Same with him. Like, we might need to talk about this tomorrow so that we don't hurt each other with our words. Because I know like if I say something that really, really hurtful about him, like that's just going to stick the same way. If he says something really hurtful about me, it's going to stick more than what someone on social media will say about me. Like if he says it, it's really going to hurt. And that's going to take a long time for me to get over. And so just biting our tongue and like, okay, let's talk about this in an hour. Let's gather. And so we can communicate in a healthy way. And I think that's huge to a healthy relationship. And like he said, choosing each other, like we know when we got married, that means we're going to be together for the rest of our lives. Like there just isn't another option. And so no matter what comes, no matter what tidal waves we're on, like I know we're going to work it out. So there's just like this piece about that, like no matter how hard, like you said, the ebbs and flows, like we go through hard seasons, but I know we're going to come out of it and there's going to be a good season. Like that's just how marriage works. Like we might be in a hard time right now, but we're going to come out of this and be better than ever, because God's just going to use that to help us. And it's going to be something that now we can put behind us and grow from it. So just that like peace that comes with the commitment of like, we're not going anywhere. So like he said, like we know all each other's dirt. Like I know all the bad things about him. He knows all the bad things about you. So you're like as vulnerable as you'll ever be when you're married, but you can be, because it's like, I know he accepts me like that and we can get past this, whatever it is. Hopefully that answered the question.
No,
went on long tangents.
What, real quick on maybe give some advice that you would have in regards to, we're going to close here probably in the next 10 minutes or so, but some advice that you would give both of you, like what would you, and what is it that you saw in one another, but what qualities would you tell Taryn, a young girl, to look after for a guy? Like obviously attraction, everyone's going to say attraction's number one. Like you need to be attracted or it's not going to work. Well, that's obviously, but what are some qualities that you would say, like girls, if you are one day wanting, to be married and be in a relationship, here are some of the qualities that you need to look for. Just because a guy, you think he's a stud doesn't mean he's a guy for you. And then, and talk about some of those qualities. And Justin, talk about some qualities that you would say from aspects from, there's my wife. Yeah.
Oh, this is probably on YouTube.
It is. You're fine. She should be sitting with me too.
I got really excited about seeing you, Taryn.
Come on. So usually I have my 1-year-old barge the door open if I don't lock it, but I will take I'll take my gorgeous wife coming in to say hello. So, and then Justin, give us maybe a few things that you would say to guys, because guys are usually like, oh man, I'll hear so often just growing up, and it's like, man, Oh shoot, these I
Muted.
can't my headphones. Sorry, little habit that I have. I open it up. You know, you'll hear guys say, "Oh, she's gorgeous. I'm gonna try to get her number. I'm gonna ask her out." And it's like, dude, you don't even know the girl. Like, just because she's beautiful doesn't mean nothing. But talk a little bit about some of the characteristics you would encourage single people to look out for in a future relationship.
Okay, let me think. I would say that you have the same morals, like the same values. So for us, that's Christianity, and like really that we have the same foundation. I think it would be very difficult to be in a long-term relationship with someone that just you don't see eye to eye with like your core values. So like that for me, like if I were to be looking for someone and that was off, like that would just automatically, it was not going to work. So like that's the big red flag. And with that, like I think comes a lot of the other traits because we have the same morals. So like I would say that he makes you a priority, like he's pursuing you. So that's, I think, going to look different depending on how old you are. Like if we're talking about high school versus college versus young adults, and like, but even as high schoolers, when Justin and I first started dating, like we talked about marriage and we talked about like that was our end goal, and he was going to be pursuing me to marry me one day. At that point, it was still like 5 years down the road, but it doesn't mean that he didn't let me know that those were his intentions. And so I think that again is just part of like our core values, but it is, I think, an important trait that like he ultimately like cared about me as a sister in Christ too. And then I would say just like a red flag for me would be if they just like lie about little things, or like they're just kind of unreliable about little things. Those again will just like magnify when you get married or you're in a long-term relationship, because you need to be able to rely on your partner, at least as a woman. I think like I need to know that what he says is true, and what he says he's going to do, he's going to do. And I don't know, I think that's just a really important trait to have. I'm trying to think like what else is a good trait for those aren't very many.
Oh, it's good.
What else? What were you gonna say? And then I might think of more.
No, I mean, I agree with everything Terrence said. I think, you know, the baseline, you know, if I'm talking to guys, is like, you know, make sure, you know, assuming that you are a believer, you know, you need to pursue a woman or a girl that is also a believer, right? You know, you have to be equally yoked. And so that's just going to be the starting point. I don't know any different. You know, I wouldn't know what pursuing, you know, quote unquote, like a worldly woman or girl would look like. So, you know, in pursuing Taryn, you know, she's helped challenge my faith. I know, you know, men are the leaders of the household, but she's helped challenge my faith. She helps me stay engaged, you know, with my scriptures and what I'm reading and my prayer life. And so that's important. And then, like she said, once you have that established, like everything else kind of falls into place. Not to make it sound like everyone's the same, because everyone's obviously different, but the core tangibles of what like a good relationship looks like or is supposed to be like, that stuff kind of falls into place. And I would just also add, like, in terms of marriage, and I know we're just kind of talking about courtship, but in terms of marriage, like, and you'll have marriage counseling and you'll go over all this stuff, but it's important to know that like you're entering, and we just talked about this the other day with like our Broncos Bible study, like you're entering that marriage, whether you know it or not, with like loads of luggage. And whether you've, you know, talked about some of it, scratched the surface, or thought you completely, you know, left some bags behind, like there's always going to be baggage that like is going to be there. And so, you know, for like women, it could have been like, you know, dad problems like growing up. It could have been like just men in general. You know, for the guys, it could be, you know, pornography. It could be all these different, you know, things that like you think you hit on and you think you have a grasp on, but like it just kind of flares up when you're in marriage. And those are the hard times I'm talking about. And so I just think it's important to know, once again, like you're two unperfect people trying to figure out how to be one under the roof of the Lord. And so it's always good to keep that in perspective. And then when you do mess up and when you are under those times, like it's important to, for you to own that stuff and to like Taryn said, like not lie about anything, like make a complete, almost like 180, for a better lack of a term, and just really focus on one, your relationship with God, and two, your significant other, because they should be with you through thick and thin. So
yeah, I'll also, one more thing I'll add, because like he said, as long as you have, and I said that too, like you have the same foundation, like a lot of things fall into place. But that doesn't mean like, okay, so I could just marry any Christian man and we'll be happy. Like there has to be, like you said, the attraction is important, and there has to be some like compatibility. And I think it could boil down to like, do you like who you are when you're around them? Like, do you feel like you're a better person? Do you feel like you are not necessarily like, sorry, the dog,
right.
Not necessarily like, okay, he makes me happy, so like he's the one. Because again, we go through ebbs and flows, but it's like, okay, he makes me a better me, and like he challenges me enough, but also like we can laugh together and we have fun when we go on dates, and like all that stuff is very important too. But the core values, I think, are definitely number one and like a good starting place. But yeah, I think those were the main traits that came to our mind right now. But
that's fire. I have one before we get off. How is it, or Justin, I feel like you should start off with this question. I'm just throwing him an alley-oop, Taryn. You'll see it. So like, how does Taryn support you throughout the season? I mean, it is a professional career, but like, what are some of the ways that you see specifically that she's supporting you? You got to slam dunk this when I set it up. Yeah. Got you, bro. I got you.
I mean, there's a bunch of ways, honestly. Like, I don't even know because I know we're getting off shortly. I don't even know if we had started with this question, if I could answer it within the hour. Like, that's just how much like she does and like sacrifices, because it's a big sacrifice for a season on both of our ends, right? Like I'm missing a lot of family, and obviously she's missing, a lot of me, and that's like a big part, even with just one kid. So, but she does a lot. I think the biggest thing that I appreciate the most is like she understands like my struggle. And so like one of the things that we talked about is like having the baseline of Christianity. Well, it was important for me to marry someone that like kind of understood sports, right? Because, obviously end goal for me was playing professionally, and it happened, but I'm glad I picked someone like that and she chose me because I think that's a big part of why this works. Like someone that may not understand sports as well may not understand like the commitment and sacrifice that goes behind it. And so like there are times when I come home and I'm beat from work and she needs help with Lainey, and she gives me a little more leeway. Like I go sit on the couch and I kind of like just need to decompress for a minute, right? She doesn't like come bombard me with questions or like, quickly ask me to do stuff around the house or anything like that. Like she kind of lets me decompress, and then she'll come over later. And sometimes she knows like, I don't even want to really talk. So she'll just sit next to me and we'll like both just be there. And for me, like sometimes that's my love language. Like I feel like that's the same as us both sitting there and like hashing out like our feelings from the last day. Like it sounds crazy, but like that's like sometimes like what I need. Like I don't want to talk, I just want to sit and I want to relax. And she provides that. And I think that's, at least for me, there's a bunch of other little things, but the biggest thing, like I said, that I could hit on before time closes is that like she just understands and like completely appreciates like what I'm doing to provide for us, currently. So.
And I know Justin always says this on our calls, like how Taryn's like the perfect balance for him. And I was like, even early in this call, I was like, man, what would it look like if Taryn was like the Olympian or the WNBA? I was going to say WNBA, but sometimes we don't respect them as much. But like, how would that, I mean, I just feel like the Lord's just so perfect in the way he sets things up, because I just can't imagine like if my wife was, and I'm not married, obviously, was like this huge Olympian, you know, and having to play that background role, and not even background, just people don't see you as much and they don't know the power, like what you carry. So if anything, we want to affirm you as much as possible, Taryn, that you're doing an amazing job and that you carry a lot of fire. And this call has been amazing, but we just want to also, as from my perspective as a friend, just for any of the girls that are in high school, like to let you guys know that like Taryn wasn't just like the supporting actor in this role. Like she was a baller as well as not, and she did great things and she was very smart. I mean, so it's not like she had nothing. And I think even in the beginning of the call, she talked about like she had her dream job that she turned down just to honor the fact that you chose to just bear your cross in that way and just carry it and just say like, hey, I'm going to model what Jesus did, is just to lay my life down for my lover, you know? So it's that's a pretty big statement. So
Appreciate that, Jay.
yeah.
Come on. You guys are amazing. We really appreciate you all. And thanks for taking the time. I know that your baby's sleeping, I'm guessing, and want to let you guys get off the call, have a little downtime before she wakes. But hey, just wanted to say, any final thoughts? You guys have anything else you want to throw out there before we close?
I don't think so. Thanks for having us on.
You're welcome to come on any of these Monday, Friday calls, Taryn. You get something you want to share, just barge that door open, kick Justin out of his chair, and he'll let you.
Yep.
Shout out to Coop too for busting it. I'm loving it, Coop. I'm loving it.
Out there.
Oh, it's great. No, it's awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate y'all. And I think that the world is waiting for people like y'all and others that are hearing this to see what it means to truly follow Jesus. And for us to be able to get on a call and say, hey, in our weakness, we're trying to go all in as much as we know how to be an example of what it means to be a follower of Christ, and not just somebody that's dragging people into church and trying to preach at them, but actually showing what love looks like and modeling it. As we've heard so many times, young people, hey, don't tell me what to do, just show me how to do it. I need to see you do it, and then I know that I can follow you and trust you. So that's awesome. Well, what we'll do is we're going to jump off, but Taryn, if you don't mind, could you close us in a little prayer, and then we'll break off the call.
Dear God, thank you so much for today. Thank you for Chris and Jay and this platform that they've created for us to talk to people and share our story. We just pray that whoever was on this call listening, that they just took something from today and can put it into practice, Lord, and that their hearts would be pointed towards you. Just pray for health over everyone that's watching, and pray for peace during this craziness, and that they can just grow in their relationship with you. And we love you so much. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus. All right, y'all. Well, hey, we love you guys, and we'll be back Friday, ready to rock and roll. So thanks again for joining us, y'all. See you Friday.
Bye.
Take care.